Hey guys, Mr. B here. In this video, we're going to be going over the chapter 18.3 practice problems. All right, starting here with number 1, it says, what principle do scientists follow in studying ancient climates? All right, so in the notes, it talked about how scientists follow a very specific principle, and that is that if animals and plants currently today need certain conditions to live and thrive, then it's very likely that plants and animals in the past needed those same conditions. Okay, that's the principle they typically follow. So we're going to put that down. So we'll say scientists follow the principle that if current plants and animals today need certain conditions to live and thrive, that plants and animals in the past also needed those same conditions. Okay. All right. Number 2, what types of evidence do scientists gather to study changes in climate? All right. So there were a few things that they mentioned in the notes. The first one was pollen. Okay. So you say one piece of evidence that scientists gather to study changes in climate is pollen from the bottom of lakes, rivers, and oceans. A second one was they look at ancient tree rings to see like how thick and how thin they were, and that can give us an idea about what climate was like. So you can say a second piece of evidence used is ancient tree rings. All right, so second piece of evidence used is ancient tree rings, and I think that was all that they mentioned. Though one that they didn't mention in the notes is actually ice cores. They pull ice out of like Antarctica and stuff, and inside there's little air bubbles, and you can actually measure or analyze the air bubbles, and that's essentially air trapped in the ice from like a long time ago. But the two that they primarily mentioned in the notes here were pollen and tree rings. So all right, moving on to number 3. Suppose that you are a scientist studying tree rings in a cross-section of an ancient tree. What could several narrow tree rings in a row tell you about the climate when those rings formed? Okay, so in the notes it mentioned that thick tree rings give us an idea that the climate was a good climate for growing, and thin tree rings tell us that the climate was not very good for growing. So we could say that several narrow tree rings in a row would tell us that the climate was not very good for growing. This could mean that temperatures were too low and it was cold. Or it could also mean that temperatures were very high and it was dry with very little rainfall. Okay, something along those lines, right? All we know is that the climate would not be a good condition for growing, and obviously today conditions for growing would be like, high enough temperatures and enough water, rainfall, right? So it's either temperatures are too low, in which case everything's frozen, or temperatures are too high and it's too dry and there's not much rainfall, right? But something along those lines. So, all right, number 4, what is a glacier? Okay, so glaciers are typically very large sheets of ice that cover very big stretches of land and are very thick. So you say a glacier is a very large sheet of ice that is very thick and covers a large portion of land. All right. Number 5, what occurs during an ice age? So during an ice age, temperatures, of course, are extremely low and is very cold, and most things are frozen over, and there are glaciers that cover most of the ground. So we can say during an ice age, the temperatures are very low and things are frozen over, with glaciers covering most of the landmass. All right, and then number 6, see if we can format this a bit better here so we get some more space back. There we go. Number 6, compare the climate today with it during an ice age. So the climate today obviously is warm and things are not frozen over and we have seasons, whereas during an ice age there would not be any seasons at all. Things would be frozen the whole time and it'd basically be winter all the time, right? So we can say that today temperatures are warm and comfortable with seasonal changes and, you know, plenty of liquid, water, and rainfall. During an ice age, temperatures would be much lower. Things would be frozen over with no seasons, and there would not be liquid water because it would be frozen. Something along those lines. So, all right, number 7. What are 4 factors that could be responsible for changing Earth's climate? All right, so there were 4 things that were brought up that are the natural reasons why Earth's climate does fluctuate. Okay, so there were 4 of them. The first one was variations in the position of Earth as it goes around the sun. Okay, that was 1. 2 was the tilt of Earth changes slightly. Okay, that was number 2. Or at least I think that was number 2. I could be wrong here. Number 3 was volcanic eruptions. Okay, volcanic eruptions can go off, and that can cause large amounts of CO2 and stuff like that to go into the air, and ash to cover things. Oh, actually, you know what? Number 2 here was not tilt of Earth changes. This was variations in the sun's energy output. Right, the sun gives off different amounts of energy, and it varies, you know, over time. So, and the last one here, number 4, was movements of the continents. Okay, so I think those are the 4. We can go back and look. I'm pretty sure that sounds right to me. So, all right, last question here, number 8. Select one of the 4 factors that could cause climate change and summarize how it may cause the climate to change. All right, so basically, they want us to pick one of these 4 and just kind of describe a bit more, like, what does this thing in particular do, right, to cause climate change. So, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna format this a little bit so we have some more space here. So let's just do this. There we go. And we'll do little hyphens to break it up a bit. All right. So you can pick whichever one you want. I'm gonna pick movements of the continents. So we'll summarize how movements of the continents cause variations in climate. So we can say the movement of continents causes not only land mass to move, but ocean currents will change as well, and they have a big impact on climate in different locations. Okay, so something like that. It doesn't need to be super in depth, but that, I think that kind of gives us enough. Can we not tab over here? Apparently not. All right, well, let's just do this so that way it's not in the way of the Pearson thing. This is enough of a description to kind of give us an idea of why moving continents would have any kind of effect on climate change. So, all right, that is it for this section of notes and these practice problems. Hopefully it helps you. Again, as always, if you need any more help, though, please reach out to me. I'm available all the time. So, all right, guys, that's it, and I will see you in Chapter 18, Section 4. All right, bye.